We are going to talk about the difference of cognitive psychology then and now. First, let us define what is cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychology is the study of mental processes and complex behaviors. It explores a wide variety of mental processes including perception, thinking, memory, attention, language, problem solving, and learning. Prior to the 1950s and 1970s, the dominant approach of psychology was behaviorism. Behaviorists put emphasis on internal behavior rather than internal processes, while the cognitive approach began to revolutionize on psychology on the late 1950s and early 1960s to become the dominant approach. Cognitivism is more based around cognitive process like decision making and memory.
The history of cognitive psychology can be parsed into four periods: philosophical, early experimental, the cognitive revolution, and modern cognitive psychology. So in philosophical period, according to ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, thoughtful people were concerned with processes such as thought, memory, and most importantly, the or soul. The Egyptians shared Aristotle's beliefs on the locus of knowledge. Plato, on the other hand, believed that the brain was the ultimate seat of knowledge. Though many opinions were voiced, Renaissance intellectuals considered thinking, logic, and the nature of the soul. And the locus of knowledge and rationality was regarded to be in the brain, not with standing opposing viewpoints. During the 18th century, nagkaroon din ng discussion between empiricists and nativists about sa source of knowledge. And according sa mga British empiricists, it comes through experiences. And sa mga nativists naman, sinasabi nilang it was innate or based on structural and functional qualities of the brain. And up until now, actually, nagkakaroon pa rin ng debate ang mga cognitive psychologists regarding these issues. And usually, it were all formed with scientific evidences.
Now, let's talk about early experimental period. In 1879, nagsimula ng humiwalay ang psychology as philosophy at bumuo ng isang disiplina based on objective science. In 20th century, ang mga ideya ni William James ay naging mahalaga sa paghubog ng modern cognitive psychology. Psychologists like Thorndike ay mas naging concerned sa reward and punishment. Behaviorism naman ay led by John Watson. Jean Piaget is the one who developed stages through which children develop at marami pang ibang psychologists. Ang mga technique, subject matter, procedures, pati interpretations na ginamit ng mga researcher na ito ay nag-anticipate sa emergence ng cognitive discipline. Ang psychology ay nag-concentrate sa observable behaviors at napalitan ng mga daga at kalapate ang human subjects.
Cognitive psychology began to take from us a new way of understanding the science of the mind during the late 1950s. These formative events were spurred on by research, discoveries in memory, learning, and attention, as well as ideas outside of the mainstay of experimental psychology such as communication theory, developmental psychology, social psychology, linguistics, and computer science, which gave cognitive psychologists additional breed to deal with the complexity of human information processing and thinking. At the same time, cognitive psychologists rejected the traditional simplistic theories of the mind, but in many cases held on the scientific methodology as had developed in early part of the 20th century. This era, computer became the metaphor of the human brain because of the way how does the brain processes its information.
Modern cognitive psychology. By the 1960s, cognitive psychology had experienced a renaissance. Cognitive psychology, which systematized the new science, was written by Ulrich Neisser and was published in America year 1967. Neisser's book was central to the solidification of cognitive psychology as it gave a label to the field and defined the topical areas. Neisser used the computer metaphor for selecting, storing, recovering, combining, outputting, and manipulating information. And in 1966, Hilgard and Bauer introduced a chapter in their Theories of Learning in New York that developed the idea of using computer programs to serve as models on theories of cognition. In the 1970s and 1980s, cognitive laboratories were beginning to be built, symposia and conferences appeared at national and regional meetings, courses in cognitive psychology. In the 1980s and 1990s, serious efforts were made to find corresponding neural components that were linked to cognitive constructs. Finally, with the advent of new ways to see the brain, cognitive psychologists have expanded their operations to neuroscience, which promises to empirically display the parts of the brain involved in cognition that were hypothesized by 20th century psychologists.